So so you're telling me this here is just that pigment made up into a paint? Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
So that's just...
Okay, right. So I'm off to a good start then. At least I've got my eye in terms of...
So now you can see, like, is it that blue I want? Do I want it warmer or cooler or whatever blue questions you have?
That's the thing though. The phrase that we would use, the colloquial phrase is, that's not kicking the tits off it. It's very, very close to what we're looking for, if not correct.
So I would say if you wanted more blue, I would mix in a little bit of the famous phthalo blue.
Oh, no.
We could also go with, we can start off checking the Paris blue, because it's not as Smurf-like on you.
Smurf-like?
That's ultramarine. This is
so embarrassing. What is this one? No, that's
ultramarine.
Yeah, that's the one you just picked up, wasn't it? And this is, you said that one's violet. It's definitely not any of them. Ooh. Oh. What I didn't tell you all while we're filming this is I've actually been drinking Jack Daniels. Only a little bit.
Oh no, it's standing untouched over there.
It's not untouched, it's half empty. Okay, did you get a little close up there?
Yeah, just so you could see like the sparkle. Like the thing is, I know like you want more, because I always want more. But if you're going for like a night sky with stars, like that is a night sky with stars.
It's too subtle.
I know.
A slightly sparklier star. This is too much though, isn't it? Like, that's way too much sparkle. Well, in there. That's more like a galaxy than...
Well, I don't like to say it has too much sparkle, because I don't feel like you can have too much sparkle. Like, it doesn't feel right to say that. Now you just need to find it.
So what's it labelled as?
Labelled?
It's not labelled. Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and this is not the Jem that left you in 2023. Due to the events at the tail end of last year, I am no longer the same person. However, I am delighted to be back with a video for you in 2024, and as you can see, I am excited to introduce to you the collaboration between Julia K Art Studios and the Colour Cave, and this is the fruits of our labour, and this is handmade watercolour paint, and it is called Natt, which is the Swedish word for night. What I'm doing here is being a stubborn old sow. I am determined to finish using this horrible little Arteza watercolour sketchbook. The paper in this sketchbook is terrible. It's really not ideal for showcasing a paint that you've just made with someone that is exceptionally good at making paint. However, I just wanted to do a couple of monochromatic pictures today, just to kind of like show off what this paint can do. So the idea behind it was, you all know I love a good indigo colour, so if I was going to make paint, it was either going to be green or it was going to be indigo. Julia has a bajillion really pretty green paints already, which is why I decided to go for this one. So I wanted it to resemble a starry night sky. So this is basically a really deep blue colour. There is a little bit of lighter blue mixed in with it, as you saw at the start of the video. There was pigments getting flung about everywhere in there. And also some little sparkly gold bits as well to make it look like stars in the sky. I am going to be painting proper paintings in a similar vein to this, in the monochromatic style, and I will be selling them through the stash shop as well. They will not be prints, they will be originals, because you don't get the same effect with the sparkle in the prints. You can always add in later, but yeah. So if you fancy one of these, or something that looks very similar to this, should I say, you can head over to the stash shop. You can keep your eyes peeled in the stash shop in the next couple of weeks, and I will put those up for anyone who would wish to purchase them. So the idea here is just basically to get the sky down. It's all good. Like, we like that bit. This is the easy bit, is the fun bit. And you can see the sparkles showing up really quickly. One of the conversations that Julia and I had was how much sparkle is too much sparkle? And according to Julia, there is no such thing. I had a slightly different opinion on that, because I didn't want it to be really concentrated. I wanted this to be a versatile paint, even though I wanted it to be sparkly. And just to kind of prove my point, I decided to use just this colour for the entirety of these two little artworks. And if you get the pigment balance with the sparkle element correct, when you start to dilute that out, obviously it will become less sparkly. And if you do use a really, really light dilution of this paint, you can actually let the sparkly pigments sink to the bottom, because that's what they do, and it will give you a really pale blue paint with minimal sparkle in it. So that's actually something that's that kind of happened by accident, and Julia didn't tell me. If she knows about it, then she didn't tell me. So it's actually a much more versatile colour than I had hoped for, which was really nice when it came to this stage and I actually started painting. So it does have its uses, and I wanted it to be useful. The other thing that I might do, and I haven't quite decided yet because I haven't started the paintings, is I might use this in conjunction with one of Julia's other indigo type colours, like Ula. I think there's... Yeah, or Harold was the other one. Those are quite nice dark blue. We do sell Ula over in the stash shop as well, if it's another colour you would like to see. And basically same idea, but no sparkle. I originally did have a lot more footage than this of the actual paint making process. For those of you who were top tier subscribers when we were doing the memberships last year, you will have heard this explanation. Basically, the footage that I took in the studio that day with Julia in Sweden, I accidentally deleted it. And it kind of left me with not a lot for the vlog when I talked about actually taking a trip to Sweden. So I was absolutely delighted when Julia contacted me and said, "Hey, you know, I've still got some of the footage from the day that we made the paint." I was like, yes. So I thought that would be fun to include it. We had such a fun afternoon. We were basically just horsing around, but we were going to come up with something. We were still going to produce something. So everything that you saw there, the paint mix and everything, that was me. Julia was standing right beside me though, so she had her watchful eye on me so that I didn't do anything wayward, because I was like a kid in a candy shop. I had like all the pigments. I was like, oh, I want to make all the colours. So we had such good fun, and I'm really surprised she let me drink while we were doing that as well. So yeah, like a good time was had by all, and it's not easy to make paint. My arm was absolutely hanging off by the time we'd finished, and as someone with a wonky hand, I would say not conducive like at all to making paint. But I still had such a good time, and if this sells well, if you guys are interested in actually buying this paint and using it for yourself, and we do quite well, Julia and I, we may well make another colour. But we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. So obviously the point in doing this video is because Natt is now up for sale. If you are in the EU, you can go to Julia's Etsy store and you will be able to purchase it there. If you are in the UK, or maybe if you're across the pond in Canada and the States, you can go to the Stash shop. The link directly to the website's underneath this video here, and it will be on sale there as well. As we have been doing here at the Stash shop and at the Cave, we do have an additional 2 colours of Julia's that will be joining Natt on the shelf, and I shall be revealing those colours just shortly. So Natt and the 2 other colours that we're going to be stocking will be available this coming Sunday, so that is the 7th of January. You can head over there and you will be able to purchase them and add them to your collection. I just wanted to a quick word here on what's going on. I've changed brushes quite frequently during this exercise. And you can see my little palette along the top there. That is different dilutions of the paint. So the furthest right one is the weakest dilution. And then gradually they get stronger and stronger as it goes along. This is really handy when you're doing this kind of thing, especially if you're having your strongest or darkest colours at the front. It's a little bit more complicated if you're doing it backwards. But you can see here with these sort of larger brushes that I've been using, and this paper is horrible. The right hand page is essentially the back of the watercolour paper. And you can see there how blotchy it is. The best thing to try and do is to use it to your advantage. You literally can't do anything. Once the watercolour touches the paper, it won't move. You can't move it about the way you're supposed to be able to on normal watercolour paper, and it's one of the many reasons that this Arteza paper is just awful. So I never expect anything out of this, but it's definitely worth. See these little mop brushes, that is a Jackson's Raven brush that I'm using. I've got a much bigger one, that was the one that I was using at the start when I did the sky. It seems to be significantly worse, whereas this little skinny brush that I'm using now, that is my good old favourite, the little Sea White synthetic brushes, also available in the Stash shop, super cheap. They seem to put the paint down in such a way that the paper doesn't have an absolute fit about it, and I think it's just to do with the actual paint load on the brush. Those Raven mop brushes, they hold a lot of water, and I think it's just too much for this cheap Arteza paper to cope with, whereas the cheaper brushes, they are synthetic bristles and they are marketed as multi-purpose brushes rather than watercolour brushes. And even if you've got that absolutely loaded up, and you can see how dark the bristles are, that paintbrush is normally white, and there's a lot of paint on there, and you can see it sitting on the paper there, but the paper seems to be a lot happier with it. The other problem with this paper as well is that when the pigment hits the paper, it seems to spread and bleed and feather, and it's very difficult to get super sharp lines unless you have very, very concentrated paint. So it's a bit of a bummer, to be honest. As I said though, I started this sketchbook and I feel like I've got to finish it because I'm over halfway through the sketchbook now. I'm a bit like that. I don't know if anyone else is like that. You can tell me in the comments. I'm the kind of person that, see, if I start reading a book, if I get more than like a chapter or so in, I feel a moral obligation to finish it, even if it's terrible. Weirdly, I don't feel that way about watching films or TV series, but with books, I'm like, I've already put in the effort. I'm going to have to finish this to find out what's going on. That's kind of the way it is with this sketchbook. I don't know how many more videos I'm actually going to post working on this paper, because it obviously does nothing to showcase my artistic ability, or anyone else's for that matter. I'm probably doing myself the worst favour ever here with this. It's just sheer stubbornness at this point. So yeah, those are the kind of things that I was contending with while using it. But you can see I'm rubbing along just fine with Julia's paint. The dilutions are fine, and I am starting to get a little bit of detail now, and that I've used a cheaper brush. I think that was a number 2 I was working with there. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But yes, I had a weenier brush than previously used. The Raven brushes, they only come... I think the one that I had at the start is the biggest that they do. That might be a lie, actually. I think the one I was using at the start was a size 0, and then the smaller one, when I started talking about the brushes, that's a stroke 12, I think, maybe. Yeah, something like that. So you can see here, this is really exciting. Now that we've gone down to the top down camera, look how much you can see the glitter on that left hand page. I've said this before about Julia's paints and any other paint that's either metallic or shimmery. You don't really get the full effect of the paint until it's dry. And you can see this is nowhere near dry on this left hand side. It's another terrible thing about this paper, it takes ages for anything to dry. But look at the look at the shimmer, because I've used it in concentrated amounts there. It is very dark, it is very rich. There's obviously a lot of the sparkly pigment there. That whole pan that you can see there, that's the actual one from the first batch that I made when I was in Sweden. Obviously Julia has made more of it since I left, because the batch we did was just like a little test batch to see how it was going to go. And it was made by my own fair hand, so I'm actually painting with the paint that I made. For those of you that buy from the Stash shop, some of you will get ones that have been made by me and some of you will get ones that have been made by Julia. It's exactly the same recipe. As I was messing about and horsing around with my Jack Daniels in Sweden trying to make sparkly paint, Julia was paying attention. She was actually writing down everything that I was doing. And she made me use the measuring cups. I'm sure you saw them at the start of the video as well. I didn't know she was paying that close attention, but as she said, she said so many times, and we've all done it when you mix a paint colour and really like it, and then you can't remember what you used to get there or how much of what you used to get there. So Julia was basically writing down the recipe that I was creating so that obviously you get that sense of consistency, and she's used to doing that because obviously she remakes batches of her popular paints all the time. Speaking of which, there is a colour called Findus. It makes me think of crispy pancakes. If you were a kid in the UK in the 80s or 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Findus is a really bright, it's an offensive green, and it was only made in a very small batch originally. Julia has that back for sale in her shop on Etsy as well. So if that's something you've been hankering after, I would go and grab it while you can. I am going to try and get some over to the UK for the Stash shop because it seems to be quite a popular colour. But I will have to discuss that further with Miss Julia and see what she's got left. So this is the kind of fun bits now. I decided to go back over these clouds a little bit because they just looked really washed out and you couldn't see the moon. And again, just embracing the rubbishness of the paper. Like there was no point in trying to get anything smooth. So I was like, sod it, and just sort of started like blubbing in extra bits in my cloud. But again, it actually looks okay. It's never going to be a masterpiece, but it's turned out to be like quite a cute little painting, this. I also realised too late that my shadow on the second from the right mountain was on the wrong side. I don't know what was wrong with me there. That should have been flipped over just based on where the moon is. But, you know, we'll not worry too much. So back onto this left-hand painting, again, back to loads of glitter. You can see very faintly there, I'd put in a sort of cliff edge on that right-hand side, but the paper just decided that I wasn't allowed to do that. And it soaked up the pigment into almost nothing, so I ended up having to go back over that. But this was just a much more relaxed side. I just wanted to basically fart about with the dilutions. I suppose that was the main thing. But overall, I mean, I had such a good time with this. Like I really enjoyed myself, and I'm actually quite pleased with the overall process and how the paints turned out. Not that you would know that from watching this video, but I just thought it'd be nice to do something different. Julia was really happy to accommodate me as well, like literally and figuratively, and I think we've done a half decent job. But obviously the main way we're going to find that out is through you guys, so I would love to hear your thoughts, not only on the paint, also on the painting and the things that we can do with this. I'd just love to hear what you think about it, and whether or not it is a paint colour that you would use, and if so, what have you got in your mind? Would love to hear what people are going to paint with this kind of colour, because it's one of my absolute favourites, and I will use a colour like this over the top of other things to mute it down. I do it with coloured pencil as well. Indigo's a great colour to have. But look at the sparkle, and this is why I'm going to do separate paintings for these, because that's what I want to give you guys in a painting. So that is it for today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Nice to be back, and I shall see you very soon back in the cave for another video. Have a great day, everyone, and bye for now.